Good afternoon. I'm so thrilled to be part of this 7th annual summit. This event has become a cornerstone for our community, bringing together artists, industry professionals, and enthusiasts to celebrate and explore the dynamic world of music. So it's not just a remarkable event, it also reflects our commitment to experiential learning. So here you have hands-on experiences, networking opportunities, and direct engagement with industry leaders. So our students are gaining the skills and insights needed to thrive in this ever-evolving music industry. So you have the opportunity to hear from and connect with professionals like today's speaker, and that's invaluable. It gives you real-world perspectives that extend far beyond the classroom. So today, we are so pleased to have American singer, songwriter, and musician S.G. Goodman here with us to tell us a little bit about her own musical journey. So I'm particularly excited to introduce a fellow Kentuckian. Although we hailed from different parts of the state, I'm from the most east part and she's from the most west part. It's still important, and I'm still proud to know another Kentuckian, and she's got the musical gene and I didn't get it. So she got her start singing in church in Hickman, Kentucky, almost in the Mississippi River. In 2020, she entered the national music scene with her debut album, Old Time Feeling, which has been described as Americana, folk, country, and rock. Tender and searing, the project showcases her distinctive vocals, powerful songwriting, and staunch commitment to writing about place. In Goodman's case, that's her native stomping grounds of rural western Kentucky. It's very fitting that she's here today to share her sense of place, given the critical importance of place at Ohio. In June 2022, she released her self-produced second album, Teeth Marks, a sharp and thoughtful distillation of modern American small-town complexities. Much of Teeth Marks deals with complications of identity and existence, namely the friction between your expectations for and the actuality of someone you love, like, or simply know. SG, thank you so much for being here and representing the Bluegrass State. We're thrilled to have you here. Everyone, please welcome to the stage S.G. Goodman.
Hi, everybody. I am Jill Mapes. I am going to be chatting here with SG, and yeah, I'm an alum, and I'm happy to see this conference flourish. So yeah, congrats to everybody involved. I know a lot has been said, even just now, about you being from Kentucky. And I'm curious if you could maybe trace your journey with playing music in the church and kind of staying in Kentucky and your journey.
Yeah, so, a lot of people, especially music journalists and even fans sometimes, want to know, what was your first concert? And I always tell people that I went to 3 a week at a really conservative Southern Baptist, very small church in a very, very small town. And, I have, as far as like any sort of real music training, I took like a month of vocal lessons when I was about 15, and then they made me do a play, and I quit. And so I always tell people that my formal training was in church, and it was in a very specific way because, where someone would be like, oh, this is the soprano part, or this is the alto part, or whatever. I understood those part by people. Miss Lily Mae Black was our alto singer. Miss Edna Earl Bruner was our soprano singer. And I would say maybe it was a slower process to learn the ins and outs of certain things about music, but it stuck with me. So I would say that's kind of how I learned how to sing.
That sounds really like something that would stick with you, like not homework if you're associating with people in your real life. And I think you bring a really lived in sense to your songs. And I feel like I can step into your world and see it. And I'm curious if you could talk maybe a little bit about how place factors into how you craft your songs.
Yeah, well, I in college I was a philosophy major and started out as a lit minor. And then I was encouraged to take a couple creative writing courses. And I was very fortunate enough to get to learn under a man by the name of Delray Phillips, who's a Pulitzer Prize nominee for his collection of short stories, My People's Waltz. And he became a mentor of mine. And I took everything he said as the truth. And one thing he would always talk about is you don't write into a place, you write out of a place. And that typically when it comes to writing, the thing you should always fall back on is writing what you know. And so that's what I think my work consists of. And being that I'm from a town of less than 3,000 people, farmer's daughter, raised in a rural community, of course my work is probably going to center around a lot of those things.
Did you feel any sort of shift? I know you moved to Nashville for a minute. When was that?
6.5 months.
So you didn't love it, I'm going to guess.
I'll tell you why I stayed there that long. I was broke, and I had a roommate back in Murray, Kentucky, where I have a house, and it was my first year owning this house, and I was pretty irresponsible and didn't escrow in my property taxes. And just so happened, property taxes showed up in November, or I got the message in October, and that's when I had moved to Nashville. And I knew that the only way I could get that paid off was if I stayed in Nashville a little longer. And I worked at a little place called, Moss Tacos. I was the soup girl. And are somebody yelling for Moss Tacos out there? All right.
I was soup. I was yelling for soup.
I was a soup girl. And I stayed there for 6.5 months, made a lot of friends, connections, and in fact, sitting out, having a little break right before my shift at Moss Tacos was when I got the email saying that I was being introduced to Jim James, who would co-produce my first debut record.
I think it's really interesting that there was like all this flurry of connection happening for like around when you were in Nashville for a minute, but it was another person from Kentucky and sort of connecting you back to home with Jim James.
Yeah, definitely. In fact, the person who wrote me to say that they were linking us in was a guy by the name of Daniel Martin Moore, who's an artist himself, wonderful singer, and probably about 8 or 9 months before that moment, he had invited me to be a part of this thing called the Pine Mountain Sessions, which were to benefit Kentucky Natural Land Trust. And Jim James was on that project with me. I didn't meet him there. But that was when I realized that I actually had a mutual friend. And I got the nerve to, after I made some demos, to write to Daniel and ask him if he would do that. And I waited around 3 months to get that back, to get a reply. So
I love that. I feel like the theme that I've heard and on the panel I was on earlier is just like, it doesn't hurt to ask. It doesn't hurt to just like put yourself out there. The worst they can do is maybe they take 3 months, but they say yes.
Yeah, exactly. And this sounds a little woo-woo, but I'm just going to say it. I told my bandmates at the time, or the guys that play music with me, whenever I was driving home from Pine Mountain, when I got back and we were having rehearsal, I said, Jim James is going to produce our album. Anyway, it was so fun to get together with them and say, see, I told you. It was just an idea, but yeah, I did. you do have to ask sometimes.
Well, set little challenges too. I think it's good to
Yeah.
kind of dare yourself. Like you did. There's a great scene of musicians coming out of Kentucky. I love Joan Shelley. Obviously, My Morning Jacket's
yeah.
been there forever. Rep in Louisville. Talk to me about like, who do you love? How do you feel inspired by the different scenes there?
Yeah, it's. I mean, Kentucky has a really vast music scene. It's not just bluegrass. It's not just country and folk. In fact, I would say that some of my favorite bands that have ever come out of Kentucky are from like the post-punk scene. I kind of cut my teeth in music playing in Murray. There, it was a very, very small scene, so everybody kind of had to support each other. I was on bills with punk rockers doing kind of what I do now. It just didn't make sense. And then we'd have like a jam band or something on the same bill. But everybody, that's just what we had to deal with. But there was a record store and a friend of mine who put a lot of shows together when I was in college. And we would have musicians from all over come through. And one band from Louisville that I've played a lot of shows with, deeply respect, was a band called State Champion. And so Ryan Davis, actually, y'all might have even heard of him. He was opening for MJ Linderman last year a bunch. Ryan Davis in the Roadhouse Band. He's just a prolific writer, in my opinion. And in fact, like, I would argue, Jake, MJ, whatever, like, I've played shows with him, been around him. I feel like I've been listening to what he is doing right now 10 years ago with State Champion.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
They're so underrated. I freaking love that. I feel like you always hear about it like, oh, well, they used to do that band. And they've gone on to do other things.
Yeah.
Everybody around that.
Yeah.
No, I'm trying to, I want to talk to you about Kentucky, but I don't want to I know that's, people hit that hard and that's.
And we're in Ohio.
Yeah. We're in Ohio. No, I mean, at least it's not, you're not from Michigan, so.
No. Thank God. No offense. I'm just kidding.
No offense to me, I'm from Ohio.
I'm
Yeah. My question is okay, so there's this idea in music, right, that you should go to a big center like Nashville or one of the coasts. And it makes total sense to me when artists say I am going to not do that because you're touring so much of your life, and what good is it to have an empty apartment in LA, you know? And I'm curious, do you feel like being where you are has ever hindered you, or do you only feel like it's helped you?
I think it's both. Time does what it wants to, but I guess there could have been a possible world where if I would have moved to Nashville sooner, maybe a different type of music career would have emerged, because there is some truth to that. Being in a town where people are doing what you're trying to do, I think that iron sharpens iron with that. And, there wasn't music executives coming to the Apple bar in Murray, Kentucky looking for fresh talent. And I would say, it's possible that's not even happening in Nashville, really. But as far as, I would say, in ways it's hindered me, but currently, yes, I'm gone. I play over 150 dates a year. That isn't performances. That could be more than that. So my friends in Nashville who, are living in a room with roommates or whatever, I have a house because I drive 2 hours to the airport. I could afford it. And, it's helped my bottom line as a touring musician to stay in Kentucky, really.
Yeah. I feel like spiritually too, the thing that I've been thinking about a lot is there is a creative cost to being in a big center of things or spending your life doing TikToks. Having time away to just be in a place where no one is looking for you, is I think really important as an artist and kind of underrated.
I think so too. And it's in Murray, which I've always, aside from living in Nashville for 6.5 months, and this was in 2018. So I would say Nashville is very different now after the pandemic. It's a total shit show. But anyway, you know, in Murray, I come back and I have my diner, and I don't have any, you know, there's not a lot of great restaurants, so I cook at home. Because I live in a rural place, I have to have this schedule, which really, really helps me. Instead of coming off the road where you can get whatever food you want to a city where I can get all the food I want, or go to all these bars or whatever. Yeah, I have to come back home and adjust to a very simple, quiet situation, which I think is very necessary for me to write and to get, you know, become grounded.
Yeah, I really get that, and it makes a lot of sense. And the other thing too is, like, I've heard you speak on, like, touring and dealing with mental health things, and that is a conversation I feel like comes up with so many artists that I interview. Of like, you can't control your situations, you can't control your life. You're just on the road, and that just seems just very hard to cope with. And I really have appreciated the interviews I've heard and read of yours where you talk about that, because I think that's really real.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's, you know, I have obsessive compulsive disorder diagnosed, not just a person who straightens their pillows. It's a whole thing, medicated. And I also, you know, for many, many years I've been in therapy, but I would say since, one great thing about moving to Nashville, I found a great therapist, and I've been with her ever since. And, you know, every Monday, whether I'm on the road, whether I'm in another country, I make that session work for me. And also, you know, it's something that I have to discuss with my band a lot, because I have tics. I have situations where my anxiety level or whatever is going to be, you know, flaring. And I have to surround myself with people that understand that. And luckily, I've been able to do that. But yeah, mental health on the road, I'll say this. I am not meant for that life at all. I love people, but I just don't want to be around people all the time. And I am not in a bus, I'm in a van. And luckily, the last couple of years, I've been able to have my own hotel room, which has greatly improved mental health for me. But that's just, you can't afford that all the time. And just having any sort of a rhythm out there, I do it through robes and house shoes. I bring a little hump. You know, you got to control what you can, and I do that through house shoes.
Creature comfort is very important.
Yep, absolutely.
I almost brought my big fluffy robe on this trip, and then I was like, no.
I did.
Yeah, I love that for you.
Yeah,
I can just picture it.
Yep.
Winding down from this in here. You have a new album coming out. I don't want to spoil it. Can we talk a little bit about it?
We can. Yes. My manager called me on the way up here, and he was like, "I want to hear what you would say because I'm sworn to some secrecy." But I'm so. You know what? I in the past year, like, I'm my own label now and everything.
Ooh.
So you're looking at the CEO, so I can say whatever I want. You know.
I love that. Well, it's called Planning by the Signs, yeah? Or should we confirm or deny?
I don't know what I don't actually know what the album is called, but yeah.
It's great. I was listening to it earlier and walking around.
I'm excited about it for sure.
Yeah, can you talk to me a little bit? I didn't get any of the background info of like where you made it, if you self-produced it. Like, if you can tell us a little bit about making it.
I co-produced my upcoming album, and I made it in Muscle Shoals. It's I love it, and I can't say a ton of details about it, but I laugh and say I've been on the longest album cycle in history with teeth marks, and because it's kind of true in today's environment, and I am excited for this record because I had, I guess, a gut feeling that I enjoy the craft of writing songs. And I know that if I wanted to put out a record every single year, I could do that. But for me, I wanted to continue writing albums that I felt were a cohesive, I guess, continuation of what I want to say. And so I'm really excited about talking about this next record. I would say that Old Time Feeling was kind of, like writing from a place, really kind of showcasing where I'm from. Teeth Marks to me was an internal interpretation of one's experience there. And for this album, I'll say, themes of like a larger theme of our connectedness, and there's themes of like reconciliation in there, but it is all through the lens of a very old, ancient practice that is still, prevalent a bit in my area. And that's about all I can say about it.
Oh my God, you've piqued my interest.
Yeah.
Yeah, now I'm going to be decoding these songs. You have a great arc. I feel like you've come a long way, and you were talking about that record store. I read in a piece that you had, like, when you started out, you would ask them to give their demos to just customers for free. I love that. I mean, we probably have a lot of musicians and people who could stand to do something like that. I'm curious how your experience was. Did you get fans? Did you meet people through that?
Yeah, I did. I mean, at that point, this little record I was giving out, I was writing pop music. A lot of people wouldn't maybe peg me as a person who loves pop, but like I said, I just love the craft of writing songs. I didn't really enjoy performing that. But, I was 18. It was my first album. And I was just itching to, do music. And so I guess I was pretty shameless in grassroots self-promotion with that. But it ended up, Tim Payton, who now is an owner of best record store in the world called Wits End in Murray, Kentucky, he became a best friend of mine. And, so you never know.
This is what I feel like this has been echoed in certain ways on the stage of like, just go for it. You gotta connect to connect. Like, community is really important.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people like, people of all ages who are wanting to pursue music and who are wanting not necessarily be an artist, but even, in the industry in some way, they ask me for advice on that. And I don't think there's like a one size fits all equation to how to get to do what you want. I always tell people, I'll say the only thing that I know that's true, which is the people who make it are the ones who continue to do it. And that's like it, for everything.
Yeah, and over time, I feel like you just collect more people that kind of help you, lift you up.
Exactly, yeah.
But it takes a lot. It does take a long time to just even get your people and get them all, like,
Absolutely. Yeah, it's, it's weird. I started last year a Substack, and I decided to I really struggle with social media because I'm a long-winded person, as y'all can tell. And so imagine me trying to write my real thoughts on like Twitter or whatever, it's just always frustrated me. So I've started reading Substacks, and I was like, I can do this. And after convincing my manager that I wouldn't drop the ball on that, I started one and started going into kind of my backstory and being able to give a little more of myself, I guess, in a way that was fun for me. And one thing I go into is, like you're saying, how to gather your people. Well, last year I released an album I did under a different moniker called The Savage Radley. And in one of my Substack posts, I explain how doing that in 2016, my co-producer of that album encouraged me to reach out to a woman named Erin Ray, who's an amazing artist. You should definitely check out her work. It took a year for Erin to respond to me. It took, I think, 3 years altogether for us to become friends. And then in 2018, it would be Erin who would introduce me to my publicist, who I still work for, and Erin who sent my demos to my now manager. So it's just like, you never know, like, how your story will unfold, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy the way I remember being like a graduate, and you're like, yes, all these connections, I'm collecting them. They're all going to pay off. Like, all the seeds are growing in the garden. And then you're like, that's not how this works. This isn't linear.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to pay. It might be a connection down the line that
Yeah.
is helpful.
It is. And I think, the term networking just, I feel like sometimes has a negative connotation. And the way I look at it, or some people are like, you're networking or you're ladder climbing or whatever. I just think it's about perspective and approach. If you try to make all of your interactions genuine, then you're not really doing it either of those things necessarily. And that's how I think it's through genuine connection that balls really start rolling.
Yeah, like anything worthwhile.
Yeah,
really
exactly.
starts happening. I love the Substack thing. Makes so much sense to me, and I know like Waxahachie started doing a tour one. Nico Case has a really cool newsletter and stuff like that, and it makes a lot of sense to me for the songwriters like y'all that are narrative, that you're storytellers, and it's really kind of deepens the appreciation of what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, well, mine's better than all of theirs. Mine is called Gas Station Delicacies with S.G. Goodman.
I already like it more.
And I wanted to kind of push it a little bit because, like, what am I going to write about being on tour? Like, I'm miserable, I'm surviving, like, here's a playlist, So when I was off, I'm not always miserable. I love what I do. But, if you caught me in the wrong moment, my Substack could get real dark. So I don't really always write about that kind of stuff. I make it fun for myself, and I took a little break, longest break of my touring career so far, which was like 3 months a year ago. And I took a news, I went on a news diet and a podcast diet, which meant I didn't listen to any of that. I didn't really listen to anything. I just started listening to meditation, and I discovered that there are no Southern meditation guides. So I became one. I have a meditation called Country Calm with S.G. Goodman. And so that's been fun, and people responded to it well. And the only thing negative they have to say is that they're not long enough because they're like about 2 minutes. But I write them all myself and produce them, so that's hard to like. I don't think I'm going to be the 10-minute meditation person, but Substack is awesome. So anyway,
Wow, where do you release these? I feel like I've missed them.
on my Substack.
They're on. Okay, wow.
On my
Even
Substack.
more reason to subscribe.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out. I want to release them on streaming and stuff, but to me, it's like with something like Substack, you are really giving back to the people who want to invest their time into you and to your art. And so I think like being able to give exclusive things is really nice. And also, I wasn't just going to put out, my manager would never let me just put out Country Calm on Spotify or something because it was a weird idea. He didn't believe in it at first, So
No, you got to get
safe space.
You got to get the Calm app on board. Get your meditation money.
Y'all know anybody from the Calm app? Yeah, let's get some Southern representation on there.
Yeah, you have a great voice. I'm sure people, have you always had your speaking voice, I guess?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I guess. Yeah. If
Sorry, that's a weird question, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Sometimes voices get deeper or something over time.
no, my whole family has a pretty deep voice, you know. So yeah.
It's great. You could narrate audiobooks. I really think you got a future in a few
Thank
different
you.
ways.
Yep,
Yeah.
this music stuff doesn't pan out. I'm going into meditation apps and maybe do some voice acting. I don't know.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
You said earlier that you feel like you're on an endless like record cycle with Teeth Marks. Is that because you feel like more and more people that's their entry point, like they keep discovering you?
Well, it was weird. You know, those two records came out on Verve, which is a subsidiary of Universal, and I like had one more record that I could have done with them. And I love those people. I don't have one of those like gory, like, oh, you signed with a major label and they were terrible. My team was awesome. I miss them. It just wasn't really a structure that worked for an artist of my size. And when I got off of that, I didn't have the pressure to put out a record in 6 months or something. Not that they were pressuring me either, but I knew it was coming. You know, that conversation was on its way. But some really odd things that I couldn't have imagined kind of prolonged that album cycle. I had certain touring opportunities with different artists. Tyler Childers put out my song Space and Time. And so it felt like I was still in a momentum phase as far as what I was doing. And it gave me, some extra time. But yeah, I do get made fun of by fellow artists. They're like, how do you sing those songs? You know, but it's, oh well, you know.
I think the space and time as like being covered and just like kind of having legs of its own, has it surprised you at all the places it's gone or the people it's touched?
Yeah, it really has. I mean, I'm so thankful because that album came out in the pandemic, and you know, that was the song I had so many dreams around. I do make a joke, but it is not a joke that every music industry person I meet for a meeting, when like maybe they're trying to get me to like sign to a publishing deal or something, they say, "Listen, what are your goals?" And I'm like, "I want Dolly Parton to cover Space and Time." Even when I met with Jamie Krantz, like the president of Verve or whatever, he was like, "So what do you want?" And I was like, "I want Dolly Parton to cover Space and Time." So when Tyler wrote me asking to do that, I said, "Well, I really wanted Dolly Parton to cover Space and Time, you know." But I mean, I'm so proud of it, and like, what a awesome person to get to tour with. You don't get to choose who, well, I mean, you sort of get to choose who covers your songs, but, you know, I'm just thankful that a good person reached out about it. So, yeah, I'm proud of it.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Hell yeah, I'm proud of that.
You're just one step closer to Dolly. I feel like it's got to
I'm trying. If y'all know her, if anybody in here has
I feel like
little,
the key is get to Miley Cyrus, her goddaughter, and then Miley will just like, yeah. But
Yeah.
that's also maybe harder than just getting Dolly Parton.
Yeah, I don't know. Miley, I guess she's not touring anymore. I read that. She didn't want to get dressed in like the stadium bathrooms or something. I read that. That's what she said online. I'm not sure. I got dressed in a gas station on the way up here, so.
That's dedication, and that's Southern. That's kind of like that.
Exactly. Got to keep it on brand. Gas station delicacies, you know.
Yeah, you should write a song about gas station as a.
It's true.
I mean, that wouldn't be a very good song, so don't write about that.
Well,
But you have a song about the dollar store. And it's funny because I've noticed a couple other songs recently. Waxahachie and Ben Queller did one about the dollar store, and I was thinking, S.G. Goodman did it first.
I do everything first, and but yes, I have two songs that mention the dollar store.
Oh shit.
Yep. My song "The Way I Talk" and "The Patron Saint of the Dollar Store," And I guess, and even I did a patron saint of the dollar store tour, and my favorite merch item I've ever come up with was I just took a Google Maps screenshot of all the dollar stores in my area. It's like 50 something.
Yeah, I mean,
So yeah, it's a theme. Like, how could I not write about the dollar store? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, anybody who's from a place that has that many dollars, like, I just appreciate it. If you know, you know.
Yeah, if you know, you know.
My hometown of like 10,000 people in Northeast Ohio has 6 Dollar Generals
Yeah.
only. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Yeah.
But, my parents have their favorite. So
Yeah.
we all have
I know
our
you have the
favorite.
nice dollar store, and then you
Yeah.
have, yeah, I get it. Yeah, there are tiers.
Yeah. What do you think has been the hardest part about becoming CEO of SG Goodman's record label TBD title?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can say that in 2016, I've just always been a little music business dork, I would say. Like, if I wasn't an artist, I would still love to be involved in just music business in general. So I've, like, Donald S. Passman's book, Everything You Need to Know, like, about the music business. I went and sought out an entertainment lawyer when I was making my record Kudzu, because I was working with a co-producer, Skylar Wilson, and he told me that I should start a label so that I would be protected in splits on the master side and all that. And I was like, So I started researching that. I made Slew Water Records, and most people, when they see it written, they probably will mispronounce it, but that is a slew's a little body of water. So it's just something I grew up on a slough. But yeah, so I've started it in 2016, had to file, a business with the state of Kentucky. Didn't understand anything about quarterly sales tax. Got a lot of letters from the Kentucky Revenue Department saying I owed like $87,000, but had sold nothing. It was very scary times. But I learned a lot. And now, I have a team in place that can help me make it actually function. But for a while there, I was putting out some records, failing miserably at trying to do that. And then when I was finally signed to like a record label myself, I realized that I could not do, like, there was no way for me to do that by myself. So
You have more people around.
I have more people. Yeah.
Do you think you'll get to a point where you're working with other artists?
I would love that. I mean, that's always been one of my goals, and I do think, I tour a lot. I really tour a lot, and that gave me the opportunity to be able to, like, pretty much self-finance this record. And I've always had the goal of kind of having my own imprint on things, and I kind of think, it's coming out with 30 Tigers, which is like, they do a lot of things, but in my case, like a label distribution services company to help with Slew Water. But I think a lot more artists are going to do this. I think with just the way the music industry's turned, with streaming and all that, and how expensive touring is, and merch cuts and all this crap, like, people are just going to do it by themselves.
Yeah, I have even heard of some bands saying they're not going to put on Bandcamp, which is funny because I think that's kind of the indie alternative, right? Of like get people to pay directly. But I really do think that just having your own infrastructure is going to continue to be the way if you're independent.
I think so too. And, with the algorithms and everything, I'm sure a lot of y'all in here have like read about basically how artists who use platforms like Instagram and all these things cannot actually reach their fans, which I think is another great thing about Substack and why I wanted to do it. An old school email list and stuff like that, I just was asked yesterday if I felt comfortable asking for like my followers to give their phone number. And I was like, well, can we sell it like one of those awful companies to make a little extra money? No, I'm just kidding.
$10.
Yeah. But, those things, just direct contact with your fans are really important. And that's one reason I've stayed on the road, because that's, no matter what, that's the best way to actually reach people with your music is to be in front of them. And that's not going to change, so.
Have you had of your fans, you have the Substack, obviously it gives them this opening to have a conversation with you. Talk to me about those connections that you have found through doing that.
Well, full disclosure, I don't know how to use Substack well, so I have seen messages from people, but I don't know how to reply back, and I promised myself this year I'm going to get good at that. I've only stuck to one social media platform that I actually interact with, which has been Instagram. It's pretty, it's simple.
Millennials' choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I am going to get better at Substack this year and be able to respond and have more interactions. Yeah.
But touring as much as you do too, I mean, I feel like you must be shaking hands, meeting babies all the time.
Oh yeah, and it's kind of really when I played music for over 10 years before I had like an agent that helped book my shows. I was one of those people who like made up fake agencies and tried to get, little venues to book me. But it, hold on, so restate the question. Sorry, are we both lost now?
We're both a little lost.
Okay. We were talking about touring. We're sorry.
Touring, when you meet.
Oh, when we meet, is shaking hands. Yeah. Where I was going with that was I just was touring in the worst times. Omicron, the pandemic kind of thing, trying to stay safe, like all this stuff. So it was just weird going out to the merch table, but I did. And in fact, until last year, I have never had a tour manager. I've done it all myself like that. Yeah, because it's, if it's so expensive. And that was also for my OCD, just another person that had to breathe near me. And until my manager was like, you're miserable because it's so much work when you're tour managing and you're already the front woman. It's your project. And then you have a group of band members in there with you that you're the one having to tell them like, hey, it's not okay when we're staying over at someone's house to like not make your bed. I don't want to be in that position with especially grown-ass men. But you are.
And you're the band leader too.
Yeah.
So
and then I'm getting on stage with them. So if I call them out for some sort of little thing, then I'm going up there and we're supposed to have chemistry and like each other. It's just a really interesting, hard thing to do. But because of that, circling back around, earlier on in my career, I feel like I spent a lot more time at the merch table. But as things intensified, just to conserve some energy, I actually had to kind of quit that a little bit. But I still do sometimes. Just got to check in with myself.
Yeah, I think it's really important to have boundaries when you're doing this, like all the time and on the road all the time. That I think this last year we've had so many more conversations about that, just with Chapel Roan telling people that, hey, I am also a human being.
Yeah,
Thank
don't
you.
touch me.
Yeah.
Which is a thing I have too. Only certain situations at a merch table I just had bad experiences of people who want a picture and then put their hands places they shouldn't. Like, it's a real thing. And so for the longest time, I did not allow touching when we were taking pictures. But I feel like, I don't know, maybe I've said enough threatening things on stage where people have kind of got their shit together. So I've given a little side hug in some photos recently, but
Yeah, the side hug
See,
is, you can
yeah.
do a business side
Yeah,
hug. Yeah. Wearing a shirt that says, like, don't touch me ever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Really subtle. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I want to see if there's any questions from the crowd. There's an
Oh, yeah.
app. I'm going to check it out. So give me 1 second.
They're writing you through an app.
Yeah.
Dang, y'all.
Hey, everybody.
Very technically.
This app. Okay. As a writer, do you have a routine or daily practice for your craft? Oh, wait, I didn't use the mic.
Yeah.
Hopefully, talking about daily practice as a writer.
Okay. So I think the question was, do I have a daily practice for writing or my craft?
Routine, yeah.
A routine? Lord, I wish I did. I think, I definitely write every day, but it's not necessarily like sitting down to try to write a song. I'm a big note keeper in my phone. I love the voice memo app. I'm not good at organizing it. It's just like 582 and, that kind of thing. But I always try to do something every day, but I don't feel like it's productive for me to be super intentional about it. I don't. Not with music necessarily. So, I don't really have any like gems to give you with that. I'm very disorganized with that.
Well, there is that element of like when inspiration strikes, like kind of
Yeah.
just listening for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question. No, I lost it, but I'm just going to come back to me and I'm going to read some more of these.
Okay. All right.
What would you say is the biggest reward you've received from being in the music industry? As an example, like self-expression, publicity, networking.
The biggest reward.
Biggest reward, yes. I feel like those things are slightly different, but I think there's room for interpretation.
Okay. I'm going to interpret this way. When my bandmate and I, Steven, used to play out in Murray, Kentucky, we had one goal. We would play in like bars and stuff, which was just to see if we could make the room go quiet for 30 seconds. And to be able to tour the United States, I just did my first like headlining shows in Australia, and then run into people at the shows or have them, have some sort of emotional experience with your work. That has been a big reward, especially in like a moment where, the world just feels a little bit on fire. I don't know if y'all have noticed. So sometimes, I will question like the purpose of doing music or creating art. And it was actually when I was at home on my break a couple years ago now, or year before last, that I was reading this book called The Wild Edge of Sorrow, I think it was, which is about grief practices. Because I get a lot of people who, especially around like space and time and some of my songs, like they come to me with a lot of heavy stuff. And that kind of bothered me. I was like, I'm just really bumming people out. They're just feeling, like some really deep feelings when they're listening to my songs. But reading that book, it kind of, I don't know, helped me kind of center around a purpose that maybe I'm helping lead people through grief. And that seems like an important thing to do right now because it feels like we're all in a bunch of collective grief right now. So, yeah. That's rewarding.
Yeah.
To answer the question.
When you make yourself vulnerable and then you become a vessel for them to.
Yeah. It's weird accepting that. And I would say like kind of feeling purpose in that and seeing my purpose in that. Or at least making one up in that. That's been rewarding, more so than, it feels like purposeful, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Oh, man, we got a flurry of new questions. Okay. what is the thing that happened that took you from playing smaller venues, bars, to playing bigger ones?
Well, I guess, I mean, truth be told, was doing that. I met people. I think my first show at like a proper big venue, I was opening for Duran Jones and the Indications. But I met Durand playing a small bar. The owner of that bar was his roommate at one time. And, you know, it's just one of those other connections of being able to do that. And at that show and at the Basement East in Nashville, someone from my management team was there. And so, like, this kind of little loop happened. And then when I signed with my manager, I signed with my agent. And then you're an opening band. And then I do what a lot of artists don't. A lot of artists do not start getting their teeth knocked in and going out and trying to headline like a 100-cap venue and 10 people showing up. But that's the reality of it. And I did that for, I did it kind of right out of the gate. And I'm so thankful for that. My agent, I think he's really had a lot of, like, he was a true visionary in thinking about what's important, which is building my own fan base, not, I on tour with Tyler Childers, I was opening for him at like the Chicago Bulls arena and then was playing like a 500 cap club. It's very different, but that's what it is. Like, and I'm just as proud of that show as opening at the Bulls arena,
Yeah, you kind of have to do both.
Yep, you have to.
Bring the new people in who, the handful of people from the Tyler crowd who's like, I want to be a believer.
Yep, it all kind of links, but it is, it's very grassroots. It is hard, and, I'm just waiting for that TikTok blow up moment for myself.
I'm telling you, I think this country meditation, you would.
I think so. I think that's the way in.
Off. Yeah.
Give up music.
No, that's the thing. You can have the other thing that goes viral, but then you're like, no, but you got to look over here. There's good songs.
I think it would be cool to do a tour of Country Calm, and that be the show. Lead a room of people in a guided meditation.
Oh my God,
it'd be awesome.
So people need it. David Lynch has died. Like, please.
Yeah. God, rest in peace.
Not to go deep. I'm just like master of transcendental.
So true.
Okay, so I feel like there's a couple questions that are kind of a similar theme, which is an apt theme for this conference, which is, what are your top pieces of advice for aspiring songwriters?
I would say one is when I was like 18 years old, I started working with this producer who's now like, a pretty famous producer, but he wasn't then. He was a 30-year-old guy who was working out of his house, but could make really good sounding records. And he told me something that I feel like fueled my fire by staying in a rural place, which is, he told me, your peers are not the people in your town. Those are your peers, but so are the people in LA. So if you're wanting to be a writer, then you need to hold your work up to your peers, and you need to understand who your peers are. So that's why I think, because of that advice, that record under the Savage Radley, I sought out a PR campaign. It was not very successful, but I did, but that was because I was paying attention to the people in the bigger cities and looking at the back of their records and looking at their team and trying to understand what's happening. So for writing anything you want to do, like you you can't be a big fish in a small pond. Like, you need to hold your work up to who your actual peers are.
Yeah, and I think just in a post-COVID world, everything is so much more like, oh, you're not from a coast? Okay, whatever. Like, we're all
Yeah.
on Zoom meetings. It's not a big deal. So
Yeah.
I think you kind of have to just like believe your shit and just like hold the respect for yourself, you know?
Totally. And another thing that I think, I think this is an interesting word about like people being competitive or jealous in the industry. I'll tell you a little story. I'll make it quick. I was on a road trip with a friend, and we decided to pop off in Athens, Georgia. And I was a smoker at the time, and bummed a cig off of these people standing up next to a building. And they said, okay, well, if you do that, you got to come to our show. So I went in there. My phone was dead. I go upstairs. There's this little place called the Globe, and the band's name is Big Thief.
I love it.
And it was Adrian and Buck and the boys. It was their first ever tour. They weren't even signed to Saddle Creek yet, but they were playing the songs from Masterpiece and actually some of the first demos. And I had the experience sometimes when I would see people doing what I wanted to do to probably feel what could be best described as jealousy. And watching them play that show, I was like, I'm just so thankful I'm experiencing this. And that moment really kind of helped me, I guess, get out of a more immature mindset, which is like there's so many people in the world. There's an audience meant for you, you know? But I think it comes from tapping into a place where you're truly excited to experience art other than your own too, you know? I think that's important.
Oh God, I think it's such a balance with the ego, but also
Oh, yeah.
keeping it open because
Yeah.
if you're not going to evolve if you don't stay open as an artist and be like still a fan, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's like a human struggle if you do anything creative. So I'm just like, congratulations, like to find that balance with
Yeah.
yourself. That's huge.
Well, it took a long time. And I mean, you know, I'm a really opinionated person. And there's a lot of music that I would say I don't like, but I'm trying to say, like, it's not for me. Because it is for somebody else. And that's something I struggle with. I'm being in a small place, I know for a fact that my closest friends don't really like my music. Like, I know it. It's not, I know what they listen to, and it is not what I do. I think they respect me, but, you know, if I sent them my new record, I really should be honest with myself to say, like, this isn't really for them. And I think sometimes when you are an artist of any kind, you can get really butthurt over stuff like that. And also, you know, I've gotten in trouble with people by saying that, you know, I don't remember what they do or whatever. Like, I don't like it. But instead, just like appreciating other people's vulnerability, appreciating your own, and understanding that there's a lot of people who are not going to like what you do. I think that's really important when you're creating art.
Oh yeah, the thick skin is just like,
Yeah.
and just being realistic about it, you
Yep.
know. All right, let me scan some of these questions. Your voice crushes and haunts. I'm wondering if you've got a favorite vocal mic that makes you feel like you sound like you on tape, that captures your voice well. Vocal
Well,
mic.
before all the, you know, prices of musical instruments and stuff got nuts after the pandemic, I got this on Reverb. I got like a KM105, like a Neumann vocal mic. And my voice sounds awesome on it, but it is not, you cannot play that in a venue. Like, it's too powerful. It will pick up every single thing and just squeal, and it's an engineer's nightmare. But if I'm playing like a solo show and there's nothing else going on but my guitar and my amp, I like that. I like that mic pretty good.
Love that very technical question.
Yeah,
So,
sorry.
yeah. No.
Yeah.
I love it. I know who asked it, and I'm like, yes, do one for the audio nerds, please.
Yeah.
I think this is gonna be the last one, and we talked a little bit about this, but with creative industry being so intertwined with everyday life, obviously your art being so personal and things like that, how do you create those boundaries to maintain work-life balance, if at all? That's a hard thing as a artist.
Yeah. That is really hard to maintain boundaries, especially if, you know, like what you're trying to do is just be your authentic self. You know, so I'm goofy online and I'm way worse in person, you know, to my friends and, you know, that kind of thing. But I just I don't know, I guess I just have to kind of keep a tab on that myself with journalists or with fans or something. You know, I keep certain parts of my life private, for sure. But it is, I think the longer I'm in it, the more I kind of don't care, though, you know? It's like, get on your Instagram with no makeup on, like, whatever, hair crazy, it always is. So let's be real, you know?
It's crazy how, like, we were talking about both having interns and backstage, and when, you know, my 19-year-old intern is like, just wake up. As soon as you wake up, it doesn't matter. You don't have to shower. Like, just make this TikTok. I'm like, but the genuineness or the, like, seeming genuineness seems to really be the thing, which is better than like a manicured vibe.
Yeah, totally. I mean, with my new record coming out soon, one thing I'm going to do is show some demos like on my Substack, but they are so bad. And my manager was wanting to put one on like my actual socials, and I was like, absolutely not. I was like, this is for
Substacks for the people who already believe.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I don't want them to show my dabbling with garage band program drums in this track, It was so bad. Yeah, I became an engineer last year, too. That's a joke. But I was garage banding it for the first time, really, in my life, trying to figure it out, using a really dumb M-Box console DAW thing. But yeah, but that is a real thing, and, but yeah, so Substack, yes, Instagram, all the others, no.
Well, no, there's such a, like, this idea of, like, behind the scenes, and a little bit, like, the mystery or, like, the element of going away, I just think is, like, really important, even though artists obviously don't feel like they can go away and be quiet.
Yeah, mystery is something, I have this theory, artists who can remain mysterious just blew up, and there is no other, like, fight me on it. It is a luxury that only artists who rose to stardom very quickly, or like older, pre-internet artists. But that's not the reality for the majority of artists. That's not how the world works anymore. So being mysterious is the ultimate luxury.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
To be like I love that Bob Dylan just got on Twitter, 6 months ago or something, and you're just like, random Bob Dylan thoughts, and it's like, yeah, he doesn't have to be there. He's Bob Dylan, but he wanted to be for some reason.
Yeah,
at the end of the world, he chose to be on X, but it is true. Mystery and being quiet is such a luxury.
Don't do what Bob Dylan did. Nobody choose to be on X in here, okay?
Yeah. I'm trying to get off of X.
Yeah, I know. I'm off of it, but I never I never tweeted a day in my life anyway. Couldn't do that.
You have better use of your time.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, yeah, it's wild world out there.
Well, I have one more a little bit nerdy question. You're
Okay.
talking about the Donald Passman, everything you need to know about the music industry, which I also was like a Bible to me
Yeah.
when I was taking classes here in the recording classes, music classes stuff. I'm curious if you have other. Oh, somebody's holding up one of the newer editions. I love that. Yes.
All right.
It's not like the full red cover like the one I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember what edition I had. I think I had a couple.
Yeah, I gotta stay up to the post-digital, post-streaming updates. Yeah.
I'm sure there's TikTok and stuff and Sound Exchange and all these things in there now, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious if you have any other books like that, whether they're literary as like from the songwriter perspective, or more like music industry things that you'd say people should read this, they should have this knowledge.
More like business or inspirational.
I feel like either. I'm leaving this open-ended because I realize it's hard to find a good, compelling business book.
Yeah.
Like, I'll give you an example.
Okay, yep.
The Gift. Have you ever heard of this book?
Yes.
Yeah, so The Gift talks about like gifting practices around the globe in time periods long before our own, and sort of like the ceremony of a gift, and it frames creativity as a gift, and you have the gift, and it helps, I think, artists to gain confidence that what they're doing has value. And so to me, that was like an artist friend was like, you should read this, like,
Yeah.
kind of thing. Or like a lot of artists do like the artist way now, things like that.
Yes, I have a copy of that, but it has got too much homework.
Oh
in
my
it.
God, I know.
Jesus Christ. Who
I
wants to
never-
write 20 pages in the morning every day?
I know, I can't do the morning pages. Yeah.
I will get to it, when I become a true artist, but not yet. Anyway, but highly recommend, Okay, I think that people should read Atomic Habits.
Yes.
That's a good one.
I have read that, yes.
Yeah.
That's a really good one.
Read that. I think that, for women and men, I think they should read both Lucinda Williams' memoir and honestly Margot Price's memoir. Very, very good.
Margot, oh my God, she's such a good writer.
Yeah, so good. And I say that because there's music industry stuff throughout the whole thing. Specifically, both of them like really spoke to me as a woman. Especially around like the age where certain things started happening in their career. And, also just insight to really the scrappiness of what I think it would be inspirational is basically what I'm saying.
Hell yeah. That's what we're looking for.
Yep.
All right, well, thank you so much for
Thank
being
y'all.
here. Thanks for
Yeah,
chatting.
thanks for having me,
Can we
y'all.
get a round of applause for SG Goodman?